Hello again, I'm Stephen Jerome, and I'm going to continue reading from my third novel, The London Year. It's a bit, I think I'm between the rain right now, so let's see how far we can go before I get rained on. This is part 39. When I wasn't taking my second break of the morning, in the kitchen staff dining room, or keeping our shelves stocked with items sent down the chute from the deep freeze on the first floor, half my job was ringing up customers. In the days before computers, barcodes, and ubiquitous security cameras, we rang up purchases pushing number buttons on either of our department's two bulky cash registers. I learned to add up columns of numbers at a glance and give change the way cashiers these days seem incapable of doing without automatic calculators thinking for them. But there was never a time when our end-of-day numbers balanced ever. I'm sure these unbalanced accounts rarely happened or would even be tolerated anywhere outside the food halls, but with its many small items, sometimes bag loads of them, the weighing of things in cheese and produce, well, mistakes were made regularly. My favorite customer was a dear little lady named Dolly. She came in every Friday morning, small, frail, with straggly white hair and watery eyes, to shop for her groceries. Dolly was one of many long-retired employees who still shopped at Harrods because the company extended employee discounts to them as well. Rain or shine, she wore an old blue overcoat, threadbare at the turned-back sleeves, and ankle-high old lady shoes. She told me proudly that she'd worked at Harrods for 45 years. Even if she had to wait, she'd queue at my counter so we could have a little chat while I rang up her items. "Don't forget my discount," she'd always say, with a delightful Cockney accent, looking up with a twinkle. Because besides her entitled discount, she quickly caught on that I always knocked off an extra 50%. It was our little secret. At Christmas, she snuck me a £5 note. I tucked it back in the pocket of her coat when she wasn't looking. There were other old pensioners too, retired Herodians, to whom the posh-speaking top management gave gold watches. They actually did that, after an entire working life in service. The old world was alive and well, I was discovering. Even after the 1960s cultural sea change, most young working-class men and women still had limited options. And so it had been for all the generations before. Things ran smoothly as long as upstairs and downstairs knew their place. And nothing signified one's place more than one's accent. All this was perpetuated, indeed shored up, in England's best prep schools and universities, Eton, Oxford, Cambridge, and the like, but there was another place where the English language was also lovingly incubated, and that was at Harrods. It was there I came to appreciate language, not to mention the surprising hint of my childhood Kiwi accent returning. I also discovered the different approach to the English versus American use of language. For Americans, it was a way to get from A to B. I'd never considered language as anything else, but the well-spoken British, and even the clever Cockney, used their native tongue as a musician does an instrument, playing the vocabulary for its expression, tone, phrasing, and above all, humor. I was always impressed with Queen Elizabeth's compliment on the passing of Sir Winston Churchill, that he was, among other things, a master of the English language. In England, that mattered. No one can sidle an insult, at least in English, better than an Englishman. But class distinction, it's exerted itself in other ways too. Something as mundane as which cigarettes one smoked marked a peg on the social rung. In America, one's brand was simply a matter of taste, no better or worse than choosing a favorite flavor of ice cream. But in England, players were for the working class, And if you smoke classy Rothmans, therein lay an opportunity to look down upon those who didn't. Someone tried this game on me, a player's smoker at the time, but I didn't catch the slight. By the look on his face, waiting for the thrown pie to land, my complete non-reaction was almost disorienting. When I realized I was meant to have been put in my place, I just laughed. Another example. I was never entirely sure of the term tea or tea time. For working class people, tea seemed to mean an evening meal separate from just having a cuppa, which one might have at any time and was indeed the elixir for all that ailed. But outside the working class vernacular, having tea seemed to mean doing just that, sharing time over a cup of tea. I once made overtures to a young man I'd just met who still lived at home. When I suggested we have tea, I realized he thought I was inviting myself over for dinner to meet his family. I knew at that moment that we were, dare I say, of different classes. In terms of education and relative financial and cultural backgrounds, we probably were. It was all summed up in the use of one word. Similarly, toilet versus loo versus bathroom seemed to also parse along cultural lines. I always said go to the loo, which undoubtedly rang some kind of class bell. You had to be born into the colloquialisms. England thrived on these nuances, the little one-upmanships. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Stay tuned for part 40 coming up tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned.